Welcome to PENSARE Basketball Live. Today, we're talking about how the NBA playoffs currently underway. We're 3 rounds in. The NBA playoffs are exposing the Toronto Raptors' biggest roster hole. And we're going to talk about it because as it is currently constructed, we can all agree or disagree on how close you think the Raptors are to actually contending. We can certainly various degrees of opinions out there on how good a player Scotty Barnes is, how healthy Brandon Ingram's going to be, just what you project the upside of some of the young players you drafted last year, how soon they can contribute. But let's be honest, when you make that move for Brandon Ingram, given the context of how the East has changed with Jason Tatum's injury, there's a realistic chance that the Raptors could make a competitive run in the Eastern Conference next year. There are a lot of teams, frankly, that look to be falling off. I mean, you can certainly consider the Milwaukee Bucks, you can consider the Boston Celtics, you can certainly look at the roster holes that are very, very obvious and apparent for teams like New York. They don't have a lot of depth. There's not a lot of cap flexibility for some of these teams. A lot of these teams are going to be looking to be bad next year. You're too good to be bad. So why be in the middle? Why be a playing team? Why not go all in? But there's a problem with going all in. You're not good enough because there is this big problem. And I think the last 2 rounds, or specifically the 2 series that are happening right now, are exposing this. But I think the entire playoffs have exposed this. So give me W if you managed to catch the New York Knicks beat the Indiana Pacers last night. And give me a W if you also watched game 2, where the Indiana Pacers beat the New York Knicks. Now, there's something very interesting about the lineups down the stretch for the New York Knicks. In game 2, they decided to bench Karl-Anthony Towns. It was big news. How can you bench Big Purr, right? He's your, highest paid player. He's your, he's the greatest offensive. He's the greatest shooting big man of all time by his own metrics. He'd just given you like a 35-point game in the series. What are we doing benching him? But it was desperation. They didn't bench him because they wanted to send him a message. They didn't bench him because, they thought they were better without him. They benched him because they had to, right? They benched him because the Indiana Pacers were putting too much pressure on their defense and they had 2 defensive liabilities. Watch last game. Jalen Brunson, clutch player of the year, sits out until the 97-second mark in a game that was not decided, a game that was relatively close. I'm not saying that he sat out in a blowout. No, this was a 1 to 2 point game down the stretch. And of course, by the end, the Knicks win by 6. But this was a huge come from behind victory. And the 2 best stretches that New York played yesterday were without Jalen Brunson. Okay, wait a second. Jalen Brunson is a top 10, 15, 20 player in the league. How are you better without him? Well, simply put, the game of basketball is always going to come down to which team can score more points. And now, Jalen Brunson had it going. Last night he didn't have it going, but in game 2, he had it going. And last night, Karl-Anthony Towns didn't have it going in the first quarter, first half. He scored 4 points in the first half, but then he comes out and he's balling in the fourth quarter. So they rode with him. But I think Tom Thibodeau has sort of understood that playing with these 2 players at the same time is going to result in a mess for your defense because there's too many holes. And it really doesn't help that Jalen Brunson is so tiny. It also does, but he tries. He certainly tries. There's a lot. It's more than I can say for certain players in this league that he at least gives an effort. But he is, at the end of the day, a very small guard. He's about 6'1", doesn't have a huge wingspan. And this is just going to come down to the physics of trying to stop the play. Now, what happens when another team that you run up against, the Indiana Pacers, isn't as talented as the Knicks, top roster? I don't think most people, you look at the roster of the Knicks, you see Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, you just assume that's a more talented team, right? We can say they're like the better team. Don't be a prisoner of the moment. Like, just go back to the preseason rankings. The Knicks were considered a contender. The Indiana Pacers were considered a team that was lucky to make it to the conference finals. But how is it that Indiana, despite not having a true superstar, the closest thing they have to a superstar is something between Haliburton and Pascal Siakam, and neither one is on the level of a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or even, frankly, as a shot maker on a Jalen Brunson. How is it that they're succeeding? They're succeeding because they force mistakes, because they play super fast. They often play 5 out. They play with a ton of decision makers, and they're really well coached. That's it. That's what it is. And they force you to make a ton of decisions defensively until you make a mistake. And when you have two defensive liabilities on the court at the same time, the mistakes are inevitable. You're going to make a mistake on the third decision you make, the fifth decision you make, the eighth decision you make, and Karl-Anthony Towns just doesn't really dial it up defensively. He might be the worst drop big in the league. The NBA is a copycat league. What happens in the playoffs very often will dictate what happens in the offseason and what happens subsequently in the draft. And I do think that when a particular archetype of player becomes very successful, there's always a glut of people who are looking for the next one. Good example, Dirk Nowitzki becomes successful. We get Andrea Bargnani, Nicholas Gidishvili, Jan Vesely. We get a ton of these, wannabe Dirks, right? These big foreign prospects where everyone's looking for the next Dirk. It's the same thing when Steph Curry becomes successful. Suddenly teams are looking at Buddy Hield. Like, can he be the next Steph Curry? The copycat thing is inevitable. It's going to happen. Two trends that have emerged. Size is back. We talked about it. The double big lineups, how teams like OKC are able to play Chet and Ihart together, how teams like New York are succeeding playing Mitchell Robinson. Even if you go back to the first round, how Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün were able to play together and just soak up possessions because they're crashing the offensive glass and putting so much pressure in the most vulnerable part of the team, which is right in front of the rim. That's the goal of every offense, is to get to the basket. Everything else is if I can design the perfect offense, it's a layup line. That's really all it is. So when I think about what's happening in the playoffs right now, I certainly know that Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster are watching this. And so, we did a live a few days ago, and I think it was almost over a week ago now, where we looked at all the Raptors players and we started to say, okay, find a team that's playing a player as bad as X, Y, Z. Is there a player that is, and no, they're not. But this doesn't only come down to a talent equation. This is not just as simple as, okay, Grady Dick's not good enough to play on the Indiana Pacers. Grady Dick's player archetype does not exist on the Indiana Pacers. The example is not anecdotal. I'm not just pointing to a 2-game sample and saying, well, look, this happened in game 2 and 3, and so this is the trend. Look at what the Minnesota Timberwolves did. They also benched Julius Randle. Why? Same reason. Defense. He couldn't hang defensively. They're bleeding oil. And if you're looking at the defensive liabilities that are currently playing in the conference finals, name them out. Who are the defensive liabilities? Jalen Brunson, Karl-Anthony Towns, Julius Randle. Who else? Who is the defensive liability who's playing in the playoffs right now? If you're thinking about those 3 players, I think there's one more whose name is just not coming to me right now. Pascal Siakam is not a great defender at this point. In either case, you're talking about all NBA guys, right? So that's how good you have. Haliburton, that's it. Another all NBA guy. So Hallie, that's 4. If you include Siakam, that's 5. Mike Conley is not a defensive liability. He's not a great defender, but he's not a defensive liability. When you consider those players, so you're basically telling me you have to be an all NBA offensive player in order to play on the court. And one thing that Grady Dick, RJ Barrett, and Emmanuel Quickley have in common is none of them have ever sniffed an all-NBA team. In fact, none of them have ever sniffed an all-star team. I understand if Luka Doncic is your central cog, or if Nikola Jokic is your central cog, maybe you have to live with one defensive liability, but it's your star. It's your star. They're giving you so much output offensively. It helps to some extent defensively to have a stable offense that doesn't consistently turn the ball over. A Tyrese Haliburton, you can scheme for that, right? You can scheme for it. He tries a little bit, I guess. He's not good. He's not good by any metric. Siakam is the best of the bunch that I described. Like, he's definitely the best defender. Randle is big. He can guard in the post a little bit. Karl-Anthony Towns, just terrible. Other than just strictly on guarding post-ups, he's awful in space. He's horrible rotating. So I want to explore a few topics in today's live, which won't hopefully go very long because I'm tired. We just did a 3-hour live on Player's Choice. So I want to explore a few topics. Number one, I want to explore the concept of defense, how it works in the NBA and how it's changed from the 90s and the game that I grew up watching. Number two, I want to talk about the Raptors roster. Specifically, is it tenable? Is it scalable? Is it possible to win with the players that the Raptors currently have? And if not, then how is it that the Raptors had the 4th ranked defense for the last 44 games? Is that real or is that just noise? Is that just a fake stat? The final thing I want to talk about is how this should influence the Raptors' decisions from draft night onward through the rest of the offseason. And we'll also explore like a couple of hypothetical trades, most of which are probably pretty unrealistic, but could be tinkered with. Okay, first things first. How has defense changed? Well, defense is a reaction to offense. And so, really, the first question is how has offense changed? Offense in the 90s was very much inside the arc, right? Athletes haven't gotten so much bigger. They've gotten a little bit bigger, but I think the court has widened in terms of the range of places where people score from. We all remember Sam Perkins. You know, okay, Sam Perkins was a good shooter. There's like 35 bigs in the league that shoot better than him right now, and he was an outlier among outliers when he played. You had guys like Charles Oakley. You had, guys who could sort of hit from the mid post. But again, it was all very paint centric. And so, when you consider the game in the 90s, the 80s, it was very much focused on, first of all, it slowed down a lot in the 90s, which also helps your defense, not having to guard as much in transition, fewer possessions. There's a lot less off ball action in the 90s. Like you would often see isolations on the left block for a Michael Jordan or a Drazen Petrovic, but you wouldn't be seeing a hell of a lot of off-ball action. You wouldn't be seeing screeners setting, down screens for a shooter to pop up above the break. Like, so not only is it that the expansion of the space on the court has just gotten so much bigger, which means the real estate you have to cover defensively, it's just the actions and the offense has become so much more involved. And then, most importantly, the pieces, the individual chess pieces on the court offensively are just so much more skilled. You have bigs like Naz Reid who can handle the basketball like guards. You have bigs like Miles Turner, Nikola Jokic, who can stretch the floor out to the 3-point line. And all of this puts a tremendous amount of pressure because, again, it continuously expands the real estate. The Raptors, when they won a championship, played five out. They had two bigs, Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, who could shoot threes. Mark wasn't a great 3-point shooter, fine, but they were the typical 3 and D centers, right? So ultimately, what it comes down to is offense is way more complicated, so defense has to be way better. And defense hasn't quite caught up to the offense until we see the OKC Thunder. The OKC Thunder are what you have to be to stop modern offenses. So you have to have a generational rim protector like Chet Holmgren. You have to have another second very competent post defender in Isaiah Hartenstein. You have to have the depth behind them like a Jalen Williams, who is a pretty competent defender himself. You have to have the greatest treasure trove of perimeter defenders who are super switchable, like Jalen Williams, Alex Caruso, Lou Dort. This is not something that is realistically attainable. Like, if I'm thinking about the all NBA defensive teams, the top two teams, five of those players could be OKC Thunder players. If Chet qualifies, I could go up to six. So you don't have Amen Thompson, you don't have Asar Thompson, you don't have Ivica Zubac, and you don't have any of these Thunder players. That's your defensive teams. Okay, and Evan Mobley, Rudy Gobert. Like, these guys get paid a lot of money. OG got paid a lot of money to be a great defender. So these are not pieces that are super easy to acquire via free agency or trade. And it's not realistic to say, well, we'll just copy the OKC Thunder. We'll just do what they did. That's simple enough. It's not easy. It's not easy to put together that level of defense. So the first thing that really sets the stage for how does defense work on the modern NBA level? Well, we start with like the three layers of defense, right? So you have your pickup point, your point of attack, right? That pickup point is where your defense starts, right? The second element of defense would be where your defense, like how you guard certain coverages. And then the third is how do you help and rotate and all your help schemes, right? All of this has to work on a string. Now, when you consider the pickup point, the grand adjustment that the Minnesota Timberwolves made on the OKC Thunder, what was it? It was two main adjustments, right? One, in games 1 and 2, we saw them guarding very high with Jaden McDaniels against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. What does this do? Well, it slows down offense, right? When you pick up really high, just as we saw the Raptors picking up, very high with Davion Mitchell, That ball pressure slows down transition, it slows down offense, and in theory, it should have teams working deeper into the shot clock to get their offense. As a defensive coordinator, I want teams taking shots at 1 second on the clock, 10 seconds on the clock. I don't want teams taking shots with 20 seconds on the clock. So the pickup point is very important. In the playoffs, however, the pickup point is usually not as high. Why? Because your pickup point will be your first layer of defense. Whatever's behind that is a gap, right? So if you have great elite mid-range shooters like Shea, now your second layer of the defense, which is to say your bigs and your wings, they have to move up. They have to move way up to close the gap, which is what they did. They reduced their pickup point, so they didn't pick Shea up as high, right? Because he's not Steph Curry. You don't have to pick him up at 50 feet. By picking him up closer to like 28, 30 feet, and then bringing Rudy Gobert a little bit more up, you are technically opening yourself up to be back cut to death, but they're trusting that Shea is not a good enough passer. He's not Haliburton. He's not Jason Kidd, where he's going to pick them apart. And they just assume that ultimately they can close that gap and therefore reduce Shea's effectiveness and J Dub's effectiveness in the mid range. And it worked. Now, tonight, you'll get the adjustment. Whatever OKC saw in game 3, they're going to adjust. They're not going to get clobbered by 40 again. And so therein lies the sort of scheme in which you have to operate in the modern NBA. When things get into the playoffs, obviously it's just about adjustments, right? What we saw yesterday was a major adjustment from Tibbs. What we saw in game 3, OKC, Minnesota, was a major adjustment from Chris Finch. But when you get into the playoffs, what is going to get schemed out is your weak links every time. The question I'm asking, if I'm a Raptors general manager, president, coach, is which of these guys do I think are hard to scheme against defensively in the playoffs? Is Emmanuel Quickley going to get destroyed in the playoffs? Yeah, by a good team. I'm going to put him in so many ball screens. This guy's going to get picked off to death, and I'm going to have 2-on-1 going downhill, and you don't have Rudy Gobert back there. You don't have Chet Holmgren back there. You don't have Evan Mobley back there. What you have back there is a halfway competent big in Jakob Poeltl, and what you have on the wings is a relatively, really, I don't want to say relatively good, very, very good wing defender in Scotty Barnes, who also happens to be your lead initiator on offense. So to not tax Scotty too much, you need more. You need more. Either you need to massively upgrade your rim protection. Like you need to get generationally good as a rim, on your backline defense, or you need to get way, way better at your point of attack, your pickup point, because everything in the middle, all the rotations, all the help, it's not going to matter very, very much if you're consistently giving blow-bys, if you're consistently dying on screens. And so, you have this entire effort that the Raptors went through this entire year of trying to teach man-to-man defense, man-to-man principles, stopping the ball, guarding the ball, picking up higher. What did the Raptors do when they picked up at 45, 50 feet and gave all this real estate behind? Is they left their players out on an island and said, sink or swim. And, you can argue that players like RJ Barrett maybe took the challenge and got a lot better in the second half of the season. But you could also argue that players like Emmanuel Quickley and, Kelly Olynyk, who's no longer on the team, Grady Dick, just weren't very good defensively this year within the scheme that the Raptors employed. The other thing that we should talk about, as it pertains to defense beyond the schematics of, whether you want to play a 2-2-1 zone or whether you want to play boxing one or whatever you want to play, whether you want to play aggressive drop or, you want to switch, you need to have the personnel to do this stuff, right? I can say, Grady close out to a shooter, but if Grady isn't capable of spotting the shooter and he consistently falls asleep, it's not going to matter. I can say, Jakob Poeltl, we're going to funnel everyone to you at the rim, but if he's just not effective as a shot blocker and a rim deterrent, it's not going to matter. None of this is going to matter. And so, it's always going to be a nice little mingling or a marriage in terms of stopping offensive teams, especially good offensive teams, especially in the playoffs. It's always going to be a bit of a marriage between effort, film study, coaching, but ultimately it's going to come down to your personnel. It's really going to come down to your personnel because I can coach you up to death. I can. But if I have two defensive liabilities, then all the other team has to do is put those two players in action and just pick you apart, which is why it's much easier to just have one. We've seen teams win with just one. Jokic was never a good defender. Murray was never a good defender. But because Jokic is huge and because Jokic is really smart and because Michael Porter is big, the positional size made up for it. But we haven't seen the Nuggets repeat. They've had the best player on the planet for the last 5 years. They haven't won another championship. Is the Nuggets championship the fluke of all flukes if you think about it from the perspective of you need to have this great defense? Or can you maybe look at the Nuggets championship and say they had Christian Brown, they had KCP, they had Aaron Gordon, they had all this, and they had a generational offensive player to compensate for their lack of defense. Look at the Toronto Raptors championship. Look at the Lakers championship, right? The Lakers championship with Danny Green, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, like Dwight Howard. Like, he has so many good defenders, right? The Raptors championship. Who was the defensive liability when the Raptors won the championship? There were no defensive liabilities. The closest thing the Raptors had to a defensive liability that you could actually pick on was Norman Powell. That was it. That was it. And that's why I always push back against, people who say like, oh, well, KD got hurt. And I was like, yo, OG got hurt. He was like our fourth or fifth best defender that year, right? But that's the craziest thing. Is like the Knicks' best defender was your fourth or fifth best defender back then. That's how good that team was. So in order to get back to the mountaintop, you do need the personnel. You can scheme all you want. We can blame Pat Delaney for, defensive blowbys. You can try to overbank on Scotty Barnes. You can prey on a star for, Jacoby Walter and Jonathan Mobo. But at the end of the day, you're going to need players who can actually defend. Problem. The Knicks have a player who can defend pretty well, and he could probably stop a lot of the stuff that's happening to them offensively. The problem is he sucks on offense. That's Precious Achiuwa, right? Bad decisions, high turnovers, poor reads on the court, poor defensive IQ, poor offensive IQ, but a physical specimen if I ever saw one. So it's not all about physique. It's not all about wingspan, because if it was, Precious Achiuwa would be starting these games over Josh Hart. He's bigger. He's more athletic. He has everything that you need except for the brain, right? So it's not to say that guys like RJ and Grady are unplayable in the playoffs, but as it stands right now, they're unplayable together. How do you get around it? How do you solve this? And what roster moves could you possibly make? Is it even a problem? Let's talk about the fact that the Raptors were a top 4 defense for the last 44 games. Okay. I often bring this up to prop up, Scotty's defensive impact, and I think that's fair. But I also think it's fair to play the devil's advocate on this. Number one, this wasn't playoffs. Number two, it was the second half of the season and no one was really taking you very seriously. Let's just be real. Number three, the schedule was a little bit soft. So all of that considered, I don't think the Raptors are a top 10 defense next year if they roll it out like this. Even if I think Brandon Ingram is, and I know for a fact that he is a better defender and a bigger defender than Grady Dick, and I think that'll help a little bit. Brandon Ingram is not Herb Jones. Brandon Ingram is not even Mikal Bridges at this point. I don't even think he's Paul George. Like, he's not a great defender. He's just better than what you've had. So you have a not so great defender in Brandon Ingram. I'd say you have an average to below average rim protector in Jakob Poeltl, who at times, last year was good, positionally sound. You have a very, very good wing defender who has a lot of positional versatility in Scotty Barnes. And then you have a lot of one-way players. Jamal Shed, very small, right? This is not going to be your defensive stopper, okay? This is a guy who can be a pest. He can disrupt the offense a little bit, but I don't think he's coming in and, he's not going to be Drew Holiday for you. He's just a little bit too small. If at some point he becomes net neutral on defense, it's a huge win. He also has to become net neutral as a shooter, right? Matt saying this is going to end with Carter Bryant obsession. Sure, whatever, man. Whatever floats your boat. In the end, you don't have much else. What do you have? You have a lot of one-way players. The closest thing you have to a two-way player beyond those guys, Brandon Ingram is okay defensively and very good offensively. Ochai Agbaji is okay defensively and okay offensively, but very incomplete, although he has physical skills. Jacoby Walter needs to put on some weight. I think Jacoby could be like your best bet to step into this, but there's a big problem. Your upper rotation guys as in 3 guys who have to play a ton of minutes because of the investment you've made in them. Grady, the 13th overall pick, RJ, 27 million, Emmanuel Quickly, this very, very long 165 plus million dollar deal. These 3 guys have to play, and I don't think that they're playable together in a playoff series. So what are you going to do? You're going to bench one? Why don't you get ahead of it? And either, if you feel like you can't fix it, why don't you trade one? That might be the simpler solution, right? Who's the most egregious offender of these 3? Clearly it's Grady, right? It's clearly Grady. Grady Dick was a really incomplete puzzle this year. On the one hand, I think he flashed incredible offensive upside, right? I think the misnomer, the misreputation, that's not even a word, but misreputation, the bad reputation of he's just a shooter. He's not just a shooter. He's a pretty good playmaker. It's weird, man. I'm going to say something that's going to just strike you guys a little bit controversial, but think about it for a second. I'm watching Ace Bailey highlights, right? And what I was thinking was, how different is what Ace Bailey does from an offensive perspective? Forget about the eye test or what you think about these 2 players. How different is it what Ace Bailey does and what Grady Dick does? How different? 1-2 dribble pull-ups, weak handle, don't get to the rim nearly well enough, don't have a lot of shift and burst in your handle to consistently beat your guy off the dribble, take a lot of tough shots fading away. Yeah. I mean, Grady has a lot more in common with Ace Bailey than he does with, Duncan Robinson. Of course, white guy to white guy, we're going to make the comparison to all other white guys. But, as a 6'7" guy and Ace being 6'7", it's actually pretty similar. What they do on the basketball court is similar. The difference is Grady gets it a lot of movement. Ace gets it a lot out of isolation, but it's not that different. When you look at the finishing results of like their defender and the shot quality that they're generating out of those, but tough shot making is valuable because in the playoffs, you're going to get a lot of tough shots. And so players who can hit those tough shots are important, right? But how elite do you have to be at hitting tough shots in order to be a defensive liability? That's the question, right? Grady is definitely the worst defender of these 3. I think he graded out as like a 3rd to 4th percentile type of defender. He wasn't good at anything. There's really nothing. There's no saving grace. He's not good on point of attack. He's not good with, the team scheme. He's not a good rim protector. He's just not good. He's not good at anything defensively. There's nothing you can hold your hat on and say, well, at least he's that. He's not anything. All he is 6'7" with a 6'9" wingspan. And the best thing I can probably say about him is he knows that he's bad. So maybe, there's hope there. Matt saying Ace is a better defender. No one's arguing that Ace is not a better defender. Ace is a better defender for sure because Ace is longer. He's a better athlete in terms of just, the vertical jump and stuff. But Ace was not good defensively this year. I don't know if y'all watch Rutgers. I keep watching, yesterday I was watching McDonald's All-American game, the 2024 McDonald's All-American game. Not that, an exhibition game, a glorified exhibition game should be a great indication of players, but, sometimes you see stuff, and I had actually missed the 2024 McDonald's All-American game, so I wanted to go back and watch it. So I put it up on my big screen, and I was watching it, and unironically, the person who said it's going to end up in Carter Glaze, I think Carter had 4 or 5 blocks in that game just by being big. There's so many things that you can see with these players. I was watching a lot of Jeremiah Fears yesterday. I was watching a lot of Derek Queen yesterday. I spent a good 7 hours on film study yesterday, specifically going into Ace, Jeremiah Fears, and Derek Queen, partially because I think 2 of those players probably will be there when the Raptors pick, or could be there when the Raptors pick. And the thing that I just kept coming to was these guys could be unplayable. So when you already have 3 players on your team that really don't contribute a hell of a lot defensively, and Emmanuel Quickly is the most surprising of the bunch because he at least came in with a reputation of being a good defender, now you're really screwed because you can't add another one. You can't sustain it. You'll get blown off the court. You right now may not want to hear this, but if Derek Queen is the best player available at number 9, I don't think you can pick him. I don't really do. I really don't think so. If Jeremiah Fears is the best player available at number 9, this is what I'm hoping for from a draft perspective. I'm not going to talk too much about the draft here. I really hope Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears go top 8. I really do. Because for me, if I want to look at my board, and to anyone who missed, my board yesterday, let me just show y'all here. One sec. This was my board, right? Of these players, who are the absolute, I can't draft them because there's such a defensive liability. Start at 28, Liam McNeely, defensive liability, right? Nolan Traore, defensive liability. Yegor Demon, defensive liability. I don't think Kasparis is necessarily a defensive liability, but I don't think you have enough wiggle room to actually fit him in. Derek Queen, defensive liability. Jeremiah Fears, defensive liability. Trey Johnson, defensive liability. I'm going to go as far as to say I don't think Ace is a good defender. So really, I mean, it's a good thing for the Raptors that there are so many positive defenders in this draft. Cooper, Dylan is positive. He's not bad. He's not great. He's okay. Carter's great. VJ is very good. Kamane is great, right? Khan is decent-ish, but like, man, you don't want to put him in a lineup with 2 or 3 weak defenders. He's going to get destroyed. He tries. He's very strong. He doesn't move very well east-west. Colin Murray-Boyles is awesome. But need I remind you, the Raptors' offense and spacing was a huge problem last year. You cannot have Colin Murray-Boyles, right? So that's another guy who just might be ruled out because of the offense. Like, okay, if I'm choosing between an offensive liability and a defensive liability, I'll take the offensive liability who has great playmaking chops over the defensive liability who has motor concerns. I'll tell you that. So among those top names, I might have to just jump to Noah Senge. I might have to take Noah Senge or Rasheer Fleming or Thomas Sorber or Cedric Coward if all those players are off the board. And I might have to unfortunately pass on a player, like Jeremiah Fears, who has a considerable amount of talent, but ultimately could get played off the court. Because with Jeremiah Fears, with Derek Queen, what I'm hoping for is that one of these players turns into an actual superstar. Why? Because that's how good they would have to be offensively in order for me to sustain the hit that they're going to create for my defense. This is the problem. Look, man, you can talk talent all you want. You can talk about, highlight mixes and, mixtapes and, handle, wiggle, bag. All that shit means nothing if every time I'm on the court, I lose minutes because you suck on defense. I think y'all need to really go back and study the body language of Derek Queen on defense. He sucks. He's so bad. Like, he has good hands, good instincts. He pokes the ball away once in a while. He'll make a flashy play once in a while. He'll move his feet east-west with a guard. But his motor defensively is so bad. Like, it's so consistently bad. He's not good around the rim. He's not good at guarding in space. He's terrible in transition. He gets crossed over tons. He loses his man consistently. He just has really poor effort on that end. And effort is not something that I want to be trying to teach my 19-year-old rookie. Take, for instance, Trey Johnson. I don't think he's a good defender at all. I think he's going to get destroyed on the defensive end. And so, like, all the shot making is nice and great, and the playmaking upside is awesome. But at the end, you're going to be a losing player if you don't learn to play defense. I'm not trying to build my team around the next Jordan Poole. No offense. Jordan Poole is damn good as an offensive player. Cam Thomas is very talented as an offensive player. Neither one of those two players plays a lick of defense. That's why, like, you look at a guy like Jace Richardson, who maybe doesn't have the metrics that you want, or, you look at a guy like Ryan Kalkbrenner, and you're like, okay, well, he's 23 years old, 5-year senior. How much upside does he have? And it's like, yeah, but Jace Richardson and Ryan Kalkbrenner might end up being like high-level rotation players on a championship team one day. Whereas Jordan Poole, apart from winning a championship that one year where he was in a contract year, probably isn't, unless you're going to surround him with generational defense. And that's it. Like, that's what it comes down to. So, if I'm the Raptors, I'm in a very, very tricky spot because, there are 9 to 10 really awesome prospects, but 3 of them, because of my existing roster construction, might be out of the play for me. So, okay, but why are we at a disadvantage right now? We're at a disadvantage because we're starting at a disadvantage. We're starting at a disadvantage because we already have so many poor defenders. Because ask yourself the question, can the Orlando Magic draft the players, specifically Trey Johnson and Jeremiah Fears, that we can't draft or shouldn't draft? Yeah, they can. You know why? Because they have good defense around them. They already have the tent poles between Batazze and Suggs and Jonathan Isaac and Franz Wagner and Mo Wagner. They have Anthony Black. They have so much offense. They have so much defense around them. They can actually sustain that, right? Alperen Şengün is a great example. He's not a terrible defender by any means. He's definitely a lot better than the players I'm describing in Grady Dick and Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, but he's not a great defender. But look at all the defense around him. So you're going to have to make up this equation somewhere. You're going to have to get that defense. So how do you get it? Well, let's try this on for size. These are some trades that I pitched. Okay, now this is a terrible one. Got me roasted on the internet. But hey, man, think about it for a second. Okay. Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, and the number 2 pick, right? For RJ Barrett, Ochai Agbaji, and the number 9 pick. Who says no? Now, everyone on the internet said the Spurs say 100% no. Okay, cool. What if we modify it? What if we modified this? Let me ask you a question. Again, because the extensions are going to become a concern. They may not be a concern right now. RJ is extension eligible. Ochai is coming up for an extension. He's in a contract year. We're going to deal with this all year until these guys actually sign their extension. And then on top of that, Grady is 2 years away from his extension. Shooters get paid. You want to go into restricted free agency with Masai Ujiri signing the checkbook, you're going to be stuck with $25 million on Grady Dick, right? Young Lexington said, call me crazy. I think Cedric could be very good in Toronto. He's not a great defender either. Some people might find that really hard to believe, but he's not a great defender. Uh-oh, I'm getting 1 bar. My internet okay? Back to 2 bars. Okay, we're back to normal. Okay, so, I mean, this is a deal. I don't know if it's the right deal. I don't know if the Raptors are not giving up enough, right? Like, maybe the Raptors have to give up a little bit more. Maybe there needs to be a future pick involved. I don't know. Would you do this? That's the question, right? Harrison is an expiring contract. He is a suitable team defender. He's not a good defender. He's not a bad defender. He participates. He can participate better than, RJ Barrett can at this point. Are you giving up too much? You get Dylan Harper in this exchange. He is a pretty decent defender. He can possibly morph into a good defender at some point. You do get a huge offensive punch by drafting Dylan Harper to pair him with Scotty Barnes. Does that make sense? With Brandon Ingram, like you have enough. You sustain your young core. You're giving up 2 players who are soon to be extended. I don't know. That's definitely one trade. I don't think this is very realistic. Per the feedback I got, everyone's like, San Antonio hangs up in 2 seconds. Okay, cool. Try another one. Now, this one is more of I take your big contract, you take my big contract, and you give me a little something because you are in need of my big contract. So the Magic we hear all year, they need shooting, they need shooting, they need shooting. The Raptors also need shooting as well, but I think you can address shooting now. If you take KCP, Jonathan Isaac, and Gary Harris, I think now you have the sufficient amount of defense around to be able to take a one-way player with your lottery picks or 1 lottery pick. Plus, you also nab pick 16, right? Which in this draft could end up being Colin Murray-Boyles. It could also be like Kasparas Yakuchonis. It could also be Thomas Sorber. I think pick 16 can net you like some serious value here. So I think this could be an interesting trade. I think it also gives, it gives them Emmanuel Quickley to pair with Jalen Suggs in the backcourt. So you get that 1-2. Emmanuel Quickley is like the shooter that they need, the spacing. Nyson said this one's more real. For the Raptors, I think there's the hard part about this is it kind of pushes Scotty into the point guard spot. Do you trust him to take that level of initiation jump? I don't know. But I think that's definitely one trade to consider. This one's another one. This one involves RJ and Ochai going to the Portland Trailblazers. Now, this one's a little bit controversial because you may feel like Jeremy Grant is a terrible player. Sure. but he is more of a role player who can participate defensively than RJ Barrett. And, if you're going to extend RJ Barrett for 32 million, I think this one is maybe a deal that tends to favor the Portland Trailblazers. Now, the Blazers did do something very similar to this deal in when they traded for Denny Avdia. They traded a first round pick for Denny Avdia. Would they do the similar thing for RJ Barrett? They're kind of in a weird place where they might already have too many wing players. So adding RJ Barrett to a team that already includes Denny Avdia, uh, you know, Shaden Sharp, Anthony Simons, like this would have to be a setup for like a massive consolidation deal from their perspective. Maybe if it's not Jeremy Grant, could the Raptors be the ones adding the pick and then hopefully on your end you're taking back something that you find to be more valuable, like a Shaden Sharp, where it kind of resets your timeline a little bit. I don't really think Shaden's that good a defender. Why am I getting one bar defense? I'm getting one bar and I'm on. Sorry, y'all let me know if I'm chopping out on the internet wise. Like, we just had the Rogers Tech in here yesterday. I shouldn't be having choppy internet. It's so weird. So this is, another one. I think this is a little bit more realistic from the Raptors side. Or like, I almost feel like the Raptors are not really winning this trade. Like, I do think Jeremy Grant is a bad contract. 3 years is a lot of time, but in 2 years, it's an expiring deal. He is multi-positional. He can play the four, which is something that RJ Barrett really can't do. Ochai, again, is probably going to get paid on his next deal because of how well he shoots. So this is kind of just setting up a trade where and the big sell here is you take that number 11 pick, and hopefully at number 11, I don't know, you might be able to get Noah Senge. So who knows? You end the draft with Carter Bryant and Noah Senge and Jeremy Grant, and you're just adding like three very long wings. And Toronto Toronto 6393 said I like this trade a lot. Well, wait till the RJ super fans come after this one. This one is maybe a really, really like homer trade from my perspective, but I do think the Raptors are giving up a lot in this one. You're giving up four rotation players, three of whom can shoot really well, one of whom can, in theory, shoot pretty well, and you're giving up your number 9 pick. So you're going massive consolidation here for DeJounte Murray on a bad deal, right? After that injury is on a bad deal. And the big sell here is you get two very team friendly deals in Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, right? I think you might have to give up a little bit more, to be honest. I think Herb Jones might be like the best contract in the NBA. This is terrible. Why would we just trade rosters with the Pels? Well, you're not trading rosters with the Pelicans because you're not getting Zion Williamson and you're not giving up a lot of your young pieces that, make you so interesting. Specifically, you're not giving up Jacoby Walter. And yeah, you're not in the West. And let's not kid ourselves here. When that Pelicans team was healthy, they were a pretty good team, right? The other variant of this, if you don't want to take on 3 years of DeJounte Murray, is 1 year of CJ McCollum. So now you get shooting, shooting, and shooting, right? So you improve. I think your overall shooting remains similar. The difference here is I do think Trey is a significantly better defender, even though he wasn't really a great defender this past year, than Grady and RJ and Emmanuel quickly. CJ can be a somewhat plug and play pseudo point guard next to Scotty Barnes. He can give you like a little bit of that shooting next to Scotty that you need. And then also Herb Jones is legitimately like one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. He's on a really, really team friendly deal. That team friendly deal could also backfire because it'll limit you in terms of how much you can extend him for. But I think this could be like a very, very interesting team. I think the problem for me is getting off pick number 9. And this will be heavily dependent that my guy that I want at number 9 isn't there, right? With the Ingram trade, they get our previous starting lineups. That's funny. You don't have to be sorry. I'm sorry. All these trades are not good. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, let me know if you guys suggest some trades. But yeah, I was thinking about, how could the Raptors get more in terms of, you know, getting another pick in this draft. I do like this draft. I'm starting to like it a lot more. But Barnes and Scotty said a package like this would have comfortably gotten you Dyson. Yeah, Dyson was weirdly available for the entire year before he got traded. I'd heard that, and the Raptors didn't make a move for him. But unfortunately, the Raptors only wanted to move their guys to places where they were willing to go. So maybe Pascal to New Orleans just never got off because Pascal didn't want to go to New Orleans, or OG didn't want to go to New Orleans. SP said Grady for a mid-teens pick. So you really are. So the Grady problem is only a problem because you also have RJ. And again, this just comes back to what I was talking about initially. Everything works on a string, offensively and defensively, right? Your one non-shooter is only a problem when you have a second non-shooter, and your one non-shooter doesn't set good screens and doesn't roll hard and doesn't finish in the paint. You just don't think that you can consistently play 4-on-5 on either end and expect to win a playoff series, right? So you have to offer some value. I think RJ can participate. So if RJ is the guy that stays and it's Grady and Emmanuel Quickly that get traded in for a whole bunch of defense, I'm cool with that, actually. I think that might actually be best. If it's Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett who get swapped out for like a great defensive player, and on the other end, you're just believing in Grady to just pick up his defensive energy. Again, Grady's going to be a lot better in a team scheme with 4 good defenders than he was playing with 2 non-defenders. And that's the problem, right? Grady also played quite a few minutes early in the season without Scotty Barnes, and I do think that that's probably dragging his numbers down a little bit. Worst case, Grady and RJ are still bigger players. Emmanuel Quickly is the tougher one because he's a slight of frame, 6'2", 6'3" guard with long arms, but he is the smallest of the bunch. And I do believe that if I force a cross match in transition, I can get really easy buckets at the rim with Emmanuel Quickly guarding the paint. He sucks at it, right? With Quickly and RJ Barrett, though, what's interesting is they both played key rotation minutes for a team that wasn't bad defensively. So either they've just gotten way, way worse defensively, or we're employing a scheme that isn't helping them enough or masking their deficiencies enough, which is certainly possible. Oh, now I know why I'm having issues because I'm on Wi-Fi. I unplugged my Ethernet cable. That's why I'm having issues. My bad, y'all. We could spread the minutes and increase defensive intensity. In theory, yeah, but also no. I don't know about that. I mean, it's worth noting that the Raptors last year, I don't think Jamison Battle is like a bad defender. I also don't think he's a good defender. They did, for their 4 draft picks, for the most part, draft guys who are decent defenders. Like Jamal Shedd's not good analytically, but I think in the right scheme, he can participate and he tries really hard. I don't think he's a non-defender. Let's put it that way. I think he has a lot of good qualities defensively. He just happens to be undersized. Jacoby has elite qualities defensively. Jonathan Mobo is already a good defender. And Ulrich also has elite qualities defensively. So at least 3 of your 4 bets project to be average to well above average defenders. And your 4th bet, which is Jonathan Mobo, is already an above average defender, considerably above average. So all of this tells me that the Raptors do care that they are not that they're not a good defense, that they cared, in the previous the previous iteration of the team when they went into the draft last year, that they did care about addressing their issues defensively. I mean, how could a team architected by Masai Ujiri not care about defense? Of course they care about defense. So now it brings me to the point of what do you do this offseason to shore this up? Well, beyond the trades that I've suggested, right? I think one important decision that the Raptors have to make is, when do we want our window to open? When are we comfortable with it closing, right? If you want your window to open in 2027, I would start chasing the playoffs right now. If you want your window to open later than that, then I have to question why you traded for Brandon Ingram, number 1. And number 2, I would actually start just selling players right now. I really would. If everyone is thinking the East is wide open, the East is wide open, then maybe I need to start looking at offloading all these players. You know what I mean? OT87 said, Penn, Jacoby better than RJ and Grady. Come on, man. Jacoby is not better than RJ. Can we be for real here? He's better defensively, yes, but I like Jacoby a lot. Trust me, you're not gonna hear Jacoby slander from me. I trust this guy implicitly. I know 100%. Like when we did a poll on X and we said who is going to be the most improved player for the Raptors next year, Jacoby won that by a landslide. So I think y'all see it too, for sure. I agree with you. But also, he was a rookie. He didn't play a lot. He didn't play a ton of minutes. He had a bunch of injuries. And I do think that it's important to realize experience is a huge, huge part of defense. He's going to learn. The third time guarding Devin Booker is a lot easier than the first time guarding Devin Booker if you actually know what you're looking for and you learn. So I do love the fact that the Raptors invested so much of their development dollars last year in terms of building up these players defensively. But I do think at some point you're just too small. You're too small and you're too unathletic and you just don't have the athletic tools to guard, right? You take a player like, I don't know, James Jason Tatum, pre-injury, pre-Achilles tear, right? The things that that guy can do defensively, you don't have that in these players that I'm describing. There's not just about effort, it's not just about dialing it up, it's not about pickup points. It's just like what he can do. You don't have it. He has an elite wingspan. He can guard at the rim. He's multi-positional. He's solid in his base. He guards, in the post. He's not easy to move off of. He's not easy to scheme. He's decent in the point of attack. He does an okay job navigating screens. He has a good team, awareness in terms of scheme. He's really committed. He has a high motor. Like, what the fuck, man? Jason Tatum is a great defender, right? Evan Mobley, great defender, really great defender. What can you do as an offense to pick on Evan Mobley defensively? There's not a lot. He's very unschemable. What you have to do is you have to involve him and Darius Garland in a ball screen and pray, as it often happens, that Garland is going to fuck that up. That's it. That's what you're doing. And when you get into the dog days of the summer and you're in the playoffs and you're sitting there and you're like one game away, and RJ Barrett is what is the separator, and Grady Dick not being able to play in a series is a separator between you losing or winning that game 7, you'll get what I mean. Because at the end, when you are going into a series with 3 bad defenders in your top 6 rotation, you are planning to lose that series. You're planning to lose the series. So again, we have seen RJ and IQ participate in decent defenses before. There's hope. Grady is 6'7" with a decent wingspan, and he's 21 years old, and he needs to get a lot stronger. There's hope. But when you are going with these 3 players, the downstream effect of that is you could add no more non-defenders to this team. You actually have to upgrade your defensive personnel around them. At which point I have to ask the ultimate question, which is, are RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and Grady Dick worth it? Are any of them, all of them, worth it? And how much easier does your grand equation of defense versus offense and schemability versus unschemability become if you just lose one of these guys? Just lose one. Trade one. I know they're all fantastic. I know they all participate offensively. I know your offense is just as big a problem as your defense. I get it. I do. But with Brandon Ingram, haven't you already solved the offense part, at least to some extent? Have you not already solved it? I mean, the Raptors were one of the worst isolation teams in the league, and they addressed the problem by getting one of the best isolation scorers in the league. So if he's healthy, you've solved it to some extent, right? Jacoby has great upside offensively, in my opinion. Your hopefully in your top 9 pick is not going to be a non-offensive player, right? And frankly, I don't think there are any non-offensive players. There's non-shooters, Derek Queen, Colin Murray Boyles, but I don't think there's like non-offensive players in the top 10. Most guys can participate. I just think the other part of this really is kind of funny, but offense gets paid. a lot more than defense. Unless you are one of those reputational, exceptional defenders like Rudy Gobert, just those big buzzy names, that start generating all the hype, Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson, you're probably going to be a little bit underpaid if your key central role is defensively. Aaron Nesmith is a great example of a player who I think is just underpaid. Herb Jones got paid $13 million. How? Why? He was a restricted free agent. Another team probably could have offered him 25. Teams tend to pay offense because offense is what puts butts in seats. Offense is what we notice. Offense, we notice more, and so we pay it more. The problem is now the Raptors have a whole bunch of players who are doing pretty well offensively. They have a lot of good traits offensively, and they don't have a hell of a lot of defense. So I don't want to repeat myself 500 times. I think what I'm trying to say is the Raptors have a comfortable problem here. They can identify it right now. They can try to remedy it. They can try to walk into the season, play it out, slow play it, go to the All-Star break, see if maybe once we get to the All-Star break, have we improved? Or maybe, you draft a Kaman Malawach at number 9 or Carter Bryant at number 9, and one of those two guys playing 20 minutes instead of a Jameson Battle, instead of a Jamal Shad, instead of, maybe cutting into some of the Grady Dick minutes is just enough to make you a top 10 defense. I think expecting a rookie to save your defense is crazy. Unless that rookie is Cooper Flagg, it's probably not going to happen. And as high as I am on Carter Bryant and Kaman Malawach defensively, I don't think either one of them are saving a defense next year. So it's tough. Shadeur said, I think 2 defenders is enough. No, I don't think it's enough. I don't think 2 defenders is enough. Unless those 2 defenders are like the elite of the elite. I think in the end, we talk about coming out of the East, but do we not have to compete with the Timberwolves? Do we not have to compete with the Nuggets? Do we not have to compete with the Spurs? Do we not have to compete with the Thunder? Do we not have to compete with these teams? If the goal is championships, and again, the stated goal is championships, multiple championships. No. The Raptors didn't say their goal was, we want to win our second championship. No, Darko said our goal is to win championships in Toronto. Well, to quote the great Nico Harrison, defense wins championships. So I love what you're doing with Scotty Barnes, obviously, favorite player. I love what you're doing with Jacoby Walter. I love the upside of Ulrich Shamshi. But beyond those 3 guys, everyone on your team is some version of a one-way player. All of them. And what do you need? Offensively, defensively. You need 2-way players. Because as much as I can say, RJ Barrett can be picked on defensively. Sure. Yeah, he can. He can also be picked on offensively to some extent too. But Jakob Poeltl can be left, right? Like I don't have to guard him out in the paint. So, the other team can kind of camp out in the paint. Does that not make it harder for you, for your drivers? Yeah, of course it does. Right? I think the Raptors... Military Man said, Penn, do you think Carter Bryant could start for us because it was 3 and D? Over who? Who is he starting over? He's not starting over Emmanuel Quickly. He's not starting over RJ Barrett. He's not starting over Brandon Ingram. He's not starting over Scotty Barnes. He's not starting over Jakob Poeltl. So no, he can't. As the team is currently constructed, he cannot. Now, if you trade Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett for one player, then yes, now you have a role for him. You can start him at the, you can start him at the 3, the way you did with OG. You can put, I don't know. You start him at the 2. I don't know. I don't think his handle is there, to be honest. I don't know. I watched a fair bit of, as I mentioned earlier, the draft prospects that I was specifically honing in on yesterday: Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, a little bit of Carter Bryant, right? McDonald's All-American game. You do see the appeal, right? You do see the value of someone like a Jeremiah Fears. You just wish that you were the type of team that could actually insulate him a little bit better defensively. Because when I think about Jeremiah Fears, and I watch him play, and I watched him play a lot. Now, I didn't watch him play a lot during the year. I wasn't really honed in on his team. But now, with the catch-up scouting, I have watched at least 8 games of him now. A ton of scouting videos, done a lot of analytics breakdowns on him. I just love the talent, man. Him, Trey Johnson, Con Knipple. Like, I wish I wish we were a defensive powerhouse that could actually insulate these guys, right? My point here is if you're going to do this, if you're gonna compromise your defensive integrity as a team, I'm not suggesting go be the Orlando Magic. I'm not saying like, okay, just put, 5 non-shooters together and, pray for the best. Like, no, there's like too much of anything is an extreme. But I do wish that we had the type of roster, the type of rim protection, point of attack defense, versatile defenders. So basically, I kind of wish we had the old team back, right? I kind of wish that we had an OG and an OB. I kind of wish that we had a Fred VanVleet, even though I'm really happy that he's not here anymore. Without the pay hikes that those guys sustained, that team that made the playoffs had one bad defender. If you think about it, it's Gary Trent. He was the only bad defender. Would you trade our pick for Tumani? No, and I'll tell you why. Tumani is older. Tumani's about to be paid because he was a second round pick. You don't have the cap space to pay him. He's going to demand a hefty premium because he just made an all defensive team. And he's a very one-dimensional offensive player. Like he doesn't do a lot offensively. I think when people compare Tumani Kamara and Carter Bryant, they're really missing like all the spectrum of stuff that Carter does. I actually did a scouting report on Carter yesterday. I don't know if y'all want to see it. Someone did say that the end of this live would end up being a Carter Bryant glaze fest, so I figure I'd just live up to that. Do y'all want to see the scouting report? I don't know. Some of you guys don't watch, don't follow us on X, so here's the scouting report. So, so this is my Carter Bryant scouting report, and this is based on watching every minute of Carter play this year. About 4 hours of high school film that I was able to track down, and every piece of content that exists on the internet about this guy. So we're talking like I would say like, if this is like an Xbox, thing where you get an achievement for a completed thing, and full scouting is like you got everything available. Apart from grade school footage, bro, trust me, if he's played, I've watched it. So this is my scouting report based on that. Okay. And this is going to be, I believe, I've listened to a lot of people talk about Carter. I've seen our friends at Draft Stack talk about Carter. I've seen No Ceilings talk about Carter. I've heard, Samson Folk talk about Carter. I do think that what I've written here is going to go, no offense to anybody else, a little bit deeper. So, so Carter Bryant, strengths. I think Carter is an S-tier athlete with great strides, good balance, and good vertical pop. His immediate value in the NBA level will be his defensive playmaking and general ability to wreak havoc on that end. He's multi-positional with an ability to realistically guard 3 to 4 positions immediately. He's great with late contests on the corners, solid in help and recovery, sits well in the gaps, and does a great job of getting back to the paint. I should also mention he's a little bit foul prone and a little bit overzealous with some of his aggression defensively. And he picked up a lot of fouls this year, so he'll need to dial that back. He has a solid core strength and a good base as a post defender. Against most wings, he does his work really early. He fights for position, and he won't be an easy box target for most bigs. I genuinely do believe that if there's a wing in this draft who can guard 5 positions beyond Cooper, it's going to be this guy. Like he really can do it. Like he has a really strong base. I don't think Jared Allen posting him up is going to be food for him. I don't think Miles Turner can post him up. I don't think Pascal Siakam can post him up. I agree they'll score, but apart from like Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, like if you're talking about those guys, maybe they can post him up, but most teams are not going to be able to post him up. And he's about 222 right now. I think he'll end his career probably 235 ish. I think when his body completely fills out, he's going to be very, very strong and very hard to move off the block. He's also great as a team defender, communicates constantly. You see this in all his film from high school. He's always pointing guys where to be. He's always screaming at his, defenders. He's always calling out the mistakes. It's great. He's good navigating screens. He reads the game very, very well and tends to have solid anticipation in terms of guessing the offense. So basically, he's just great at closing the space horizontally and vertically, and he has the motor and interest level to do it well and consistently. Offensively, Bryant is more of an incomplete puzzle. His handle is high and underdeveloped. He'll often get it poked from behind or stripped outright. He doesn't have like a great hesitation, crossover, beat your guy off the dribble stuff. He's nothing like Dylan Harper, Trey Johnson to some extent. Definitely nothing close to Jeremiah Fears. His handle is really, really far away. And, I've talked to people around him about this, and this is a little bit by design. It will come with time, but this is a major, major gaping hole if you're expecting him to create offense for you. So basically, just, yeah, he doesn't have a lot of bend or wiggle in terms of drives right now. So most of his offense is relegated to advantage extension. So advantage extension would be late closeouts, teams trying to run him off the line. He can take one dribble into the paint. He has this like little bit of a one dribble pull up, two dribble pull up, side steps. He can do that. So very role player, right? Offensively, his low usage role at Arizona speaks to some of his deficiencies as a play creator right now. He can at times be passive, unassertive, or just selfless to a fault. Very Scotty Barnes and Dyson Daniels like in the sense, like he's not going to dominate possessions. He's not going to come out and score, take 18 shots in a quarter. He doesn't do that. He's very like within the rhythm, whatever you need of me type of guy. But he does have significant strengths offensively as well. So his shot mechanics are really solid. He has a really high release and a pretty good track record in terms of like prior to Arizona of getting it off in a variety of different ways. Off the catch and even with 1-2 dribbles, he's solid. He has flashed a bit of movement shooting upside. And, talking to the people around him, he spoke, he's also spoken about this publicly, that there was a great transformation that he did in terms of speeding up his release while at Arizona. He's working 3 times a day with his trainer. So that shows that it is all moving in the right direction. So, uh, huh? Don't bother Penn. He's in his zone right now. Who's in his zone? Oh, don't bother Penn. I get it. I get it. Gotcha. My bad. uh, Off the catch and even 1-2 dribbles, he's solid. He's flashed a bit of movement shooting upside, as I said, as well as some flashes of being able to get his shot off in the mid post. So we're talking like fadeaways over either shoulder, 2-3 dribble step backs. His game is definitely much more than a stationary corner shooter. Okay. The greatest misconception about Carter, and I think this is something that we didn't see at Arizona, but we see a lot of in his high school film and even earlier than high school, is he's a great passer. Like he's a really good passer. I won't say great passer, but he's a really good passer. His low assist percentage was just due to his role. I think he's more than capable of finding simple passes and even had flashes of advanced playmaking and jumbo guard playmaking in high school when, again, like you're not going up against NBA defenses and Division 1 defenses. Your handle doesn't need to be as tight. You have big angles. He's really good at spotting advantages and transition. Sometimes you'll see him pitch the ball really quickly up the court and very accurately as well. Find shooters in their pocket. His passes are like fairly accurate, which gives you an idea of where his touch and hand-eye coordination are. Uh, yeah, he's not a gifted passer by any means, but he'll grade above average for a wing and definitely isn't costing his team possessions due to his limited vision. And this is something that, you notice yesterday in the game against New York and between New York and Indiana is like, one of these teams consistently makes the right read and one of these teams consistently misses the right read. And it's Indiana that's just consistently making the right read. They just have better decision makers with the basketball in their hands. Even like, when they play Nemhard, he's a good decision maker. Tyrese, obviously, TJ McConnell, good decision makers. Pascal, good decision maker. And then everyone else just kind of fits in around that and becomes a play finisher, right? Obi Toppin, obviously, you hand Obi Toppin the ball and say, go make decisions. Your offense is going to be cooked, but that's why Obi is more of a play finisher. That's why, Ben Mathurin got 8 minutes yesterday because he's not a great decision maker. So again, consistently making good decisions is underrated, and he is great at that. His floor is a solid starter for 12 years. He reminds you of players like Otto Porter, Tamani Kamara, Trey Murphy. I think you could add Jalen Johnson in this regard if his offense comes along a little bit more. His ceiling is effectively a top 15 player. His handle and overall ability to get consistent paint touches will be a huge factor in getting to that point. He did say that Tracy McGrady and Kobe Bryant were his favorite all-time players, and that Devin Booker, ironically, was one of his 3 current favorite players. It's worth noting that Darko developed Devin Booker in Phoenix, so he'll immediately have his ear, I think, because, like he could literally get Devin Booker on the phone with Carter Bryant and be like, yo, tell this guy about who I am, So, and yeah, so he's widely credited with some of his development and growth. Booker was also a player who came off the bench as a freshman. That's worth noting. Booker came off the bench for Kentucky and was drafted 13th overall in the late lottery. And we already know that Tracy McGrady went ninth to the Raptors as well, right? So yeah. Matt said, will you take Carter over Malowacz? Yes. Bryant basically fits the OG mold. No, because number one, OG wasn't a positive playmaker. One. Two, I think he's a better athlete than OG. And three, I think he's a better shooter than OG. OG was a questionable shooter coming out of Indiana. Really questionable. Really bad free throw shooter. I think Carter's a great shooter. I think Carter has a chance to be like a top 3 shooter in this draft. Beyond, who do I trust the most as shooters in this draft? Cedric Coward, Trey Johnson, Con Knipple, Liam McNeely, Carter Bryant. Those are like the 3 guys I really trust as shooters in this draft. 5 guys I trust as shooters in this draft. So yes, to the comment, that came up like, oh, this is gonna end up in a Carter Glaze Fest. I guess you saw the future, man. Dylan Shoot saying fantastic live. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you, Dylan. I'm assuming it's Dylan Shoot and not D Shoot, but I mean, if it's somebody else, D Shoot. Thank you very much. Noble Venom. Hearing Jared Allen might be on the market as Cavs want to make Mobley the full-time 5. Would you be interested in him? Jared Allen would be the type of defensive anchor that is definitely an upgrade for the Raptors. I don't see how you get the deal done, though. Like, you'd be giving up a lot to get him because his value as, on a winning team is much higher than Jakob Poeltl's. You can't play him and Yak together. Yak ain't going to the bench making $20 million. Yak is also, by the way, approaching a player option next year, and he's most likely going to opt in, but also may not opt in. So it gives you a little bit of limited flexibility in terms of you don't know what he's going to do, and he could really do anything. So I don't know. Boss said, I will watch more footage if you say Carter over Malowacz. Let me show you something. Actually, this might be fun for you. Hang on one sec. So, according to Think No Ceilings, this is Carter's jump shot profile. 80th percentile. Also, a happy birthday to that's little Carter with Deshane Bryant, his dad, former Division I player, played out of California. Also, I've mentioned this before, but former coach of Kawhi Leonard. Hang on one second. So here's of Carter's shot making that you may not have seen at Arizona, but again, like, this gives you a different perspective on him as a player, I'm assuming, right? So here, he's just going to come up confidently, step into this, the type of shot that we see guys like Jason Tatum make all the time. And by the way, you don't have a lot of footage of Scotty Barnes making these types of plays at a high school level. Like, Scotty was a lot of opportunistic vulture type of offense. You didn't have like tons of footage. Scotty was a lot of catch and shoot threes with a very, very funky form. Carter doesn't have that same deficiency, right? So in a lot of ways, like, you look at the numbers and you say 6.5 points, my God, whatever, like the handle, like, yo, man, like, there's a lot of players with shaky handles that had offenses built around them. Okay. Like, again, look at this play right here. That's exactly the same shot that y'all glaze Ace Bailey for making over and over again this past year, right? Except Ace Bailey is nowhere near the defensive prospect that Carter is. And again, like, how quickly he gets up again, right? That stuff matters to me a lot. Here's another one, right? More self-generation. Totally isolates this guy. Crossover, 2 defenders sort of trailing. Defender right in his face, fading away to the left, boom, right? Again, same situation, this time a little less help, but moving towards the baseline with the, sort of second defender there and just pulls up on a dime. Look at the way he gathers himself, yo. Look at the way he's able to gather himself off the move. This is the type of shit that like typically like when you try to project him into like role player archetypes and standstill shooters, I'm trying to tell you, like he has a completely different like way of shooting that I think is not OG Anunoby. Trust me, I watched plenty of OG Anunoby before he got to Indiana. There's nothing that you can point to that suggests that OG had this level of handle and shot creation ability. And I'm acknowledging that handle and shot creation are literally Carter's biggest weaknesses. And I'm telling you, they're further ahead at the same age than OG was, or that Tamani was, frankly. And again, this is smooth, man. This is all this is all one motion. You could see him doing this at the NBA level. As he gets a little bit more skilled with the handle, like he will be able to do this. The catch and shoot stuff is always going to be there. This is going to be his role next year, for sure. Any NBA team other than the worst NBA teams that draft him, maybe if Charlotte drafts him or something like that, Washington drafts him, he'll have a more expanded role. But for most teams, he's just going to be doing a lot of this stuff. And he can do this. So, I mean, it's interesting, right? We tend to penalize players for taking more off-ball roles at the collegiate level. And yet, we want the player who took the super heavy on-ball role. Like, nobody has a problem drafting Jeremiah Fears because they've already seen that Jeremiah Fears has flashed this level of potential as a shot creator and as a ball handler, as a decision maker. Why don't you ask yourself one thing? How often do guys like Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, how often do they dribble the basketball? Some of y'all are really high on Danny Wolf. Look at his game. How often does he dribble? Carter gets everything off of 1 to 2 dribbles. You do realize we have a coach that preaches 0.5 offense, right? You do realize that whoever the hell you drafted number 9 is not coming in to be the man. On a team with Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett and Brandon Ingram, he's not going to be the man. So what you want to do, not coming at y'all, but a lot of fans want to do is you want to take a guy who for the entirety of his prep career and entirety of his collegiate career and all of last year was doing something that you don't need him to do just because you think he can do it. Right? So then I ask you the question. Y'all would have missed on Kawhi Leonard, huh? Y'all would have missed on Paul George. Y'all would have missed on Tamani Kamara. Y'all would have missed on Herb Jones. Y'all would have missed on all these players. Pascal Siakam. You would have missed on these guys because they were not Ace Bailey at the collegiate level or high school level. They weren't those guys. So that's kind of the point I'm making. It's like if what you're asking a player to do is effectively the same thing, like what he did for Arizona last year is what he's going to do at the NBA level. He's going to come off the bench, most likely. He's going to hit shots. He's going to guard his ass off, occasionally hit like a turnaround fadeaway, occasionally hit a couple shots off movement, make good reads, connective reads. He's not sitting there, having the keys to the offense handed to him like Dylan Harper. My question is really, if you're going to draft a player who's going to have the ball in their hands and need to have the ball in their hands to be successful, how good does that player have to be to sustain the usage that you want to give him? There's this misconception that, well, if he's not good enough, I'll just scale back his usage and he can just go do Carter Bryant shit. Doesn't work that way. Does not work that way. You can't just have someone just do Carter Bryant shit. People can't do just. He has wide shoulders and a wide base. You know what this guy projects as a screener? You can't just teach that. His balance defensively, you can't teach that. His stride length, you can't teach that. His wingspan, you can't teach that. His motor and attention to detail and ability to like sort of process the court, you can't teach that. There's 2 defenders in this draft, perimeter defenders, that have anywhere near his skill set in all these departments is Cooper Flagg and Colin Murray Boyles. That's it. And CMV is way less of a perimeter player than a big at this point. So it's like, I don't know. I've never understood this thing where, even when I was playing basketball, like they just assume that, the the guy who, sometimes like when we would put together teams, for pickup or whatever, you would assume that if you stack like 3, 4 really, really good players together, like all players who have good on ball, good handle, good shot, good shooting package, good athleticism, good size, that the 2 or 3 who don't have the ball can just go do hustle shit. Like they can go guard their man or they can go crash the glass. And they just never did. And in fact, if you want to see why so many super teams have failed, why does a team like the Phoenix Suns not work? Why does it not work? Very simple. It's not a talent issue. Kevin Durant, plenty talented. Devin Booker, plenty talented. Bradley Beal, plenty talented. They don't have all the connective pieces to make it work. Carter Bryant is the connective piece that makes this shit work. Kaman Malawach is the type of piece that makes this shit work. Cooper, ironically, right now, he might become a star later, but right now, he, VJ, even to some extent Dylan, although he has like a lot more initiation potential, CMB, Ryan Cockbrenner, like these are those pieces that you need to help your stars. So if you're not getting a star, the question is always, how do you evaluate the following two prospects? A 99th percentile role player versus an 80th percentile sub-star or a sub-all-star. Give me the 99th percentile role player, like a Josh Hart or an OG Anunoby, every time. VJ will be a star. Love him. I'm not sure I'm that high on him. Drake Powell. Drake Powell is my next film study. I have a feeling I'm going to be very, very high on him, actually. Charlie Boltman saying Rich Paul is directly managing Yang, and he's not just a clutch client on the list. A lot of GMs were at the Clutch Pro Day for him. I think there's a lot of intrigue about him. He has really, really big hands. I think that's a big selling point. He's pretty coordinated for a guy who's 7'2". That's another selling point. He's really good passing instincts and reads the court really, really well out of the block. That's another selling point. He was the defensive player of the year in China. That's a selling point. Don't make me laugh, man. Come on. I mean, maybe. Shit. Who knows, man? I don't think so. But I said it yesterday. I hope someone takes him top 10. I hope he goes either 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 10. I hope he goes on one of those picks. That would make me really, really happy. Honestly, what I need to do is I need to I need to like pump out Hanson Yang propaganda. I need to pump out Jeremiah Fears propaganda. I need to basically start pumping up the shit out of every player that I don't think we should draft. He is going to have so many concerns defensively. Y'all don't even realize, man, when he gets into an NBA game, you're going to see that foot speed get so exposed. Joshua Zippin. Out of everyone in the Raptors, reach at 9, who do you think the most superstar potential? I wish we could trade over the Spurs. Not as high on quickly. I love Dylan Harper. Most star potential? I mean, I'm inclined to say it's the guy that I have number 3. But most star potential. If we're talking just superstar, star potential, Derek Queen, in theory, Tahad Pettiford, Yegor Demon, right? Jace Richardson, Noah Senge, I think. Yeah. Trey Johnson. I mean, in either case, you're getting like a player with some star upside. It's just hard. Sina Tam saying, Rob, in your opinion, what do you think happens to Shamshi if Malawach falls to us at 9? Move him to the 4? Well, we are seeing teams thrive with 2 big lineups, and those 2 would be a cheat code defensively. I think they could be a little bit of a mess offensively, but they both, they're both very, very raw. I think, yeah, I think long term. Pen, can we watch Malawach pull up jumpers at the combine? I don't know. Let me know if thought he has a nice quick release. He has a great release. He has a great release. Hang on one second. But I do want to say, like, when you're watching players hitting jumpers in practice and it's super edited by the agency, I don't know how much you wanna put stock into it. But I think the better thing to watch will be this. So this is Kaman playing over for the NBA Africa Academy, and this, I think, like, you see he can get a shot off in a variety of ways, which is good. This will be another jumper. Three-pointer. It's going to be a corner three. We already saw him hit one in the Olympics. I think he hit it over Anthony Davis or Joel Embiid. I can't remember. Here's another one. The mechanics are fine. For a center, the mechanics are perfectly fine. I mean, his release point is way too high. There's no one who's going to block this shot. You do know what's interesting, though? Yesterday I was watching the McDonald's All-American game. Carter Bryant blocked a Liam McNeely jump shot. Bro. Liam McNeely is 6'8". Nobody is safe. Nobody is safe. Amjad said Fleming blocked a Malawach jumper. Fleming is a very special shot blocker, for sure. Where is his... Okay. Am I assuming that we're going to get something here in terms of jump shooting, or is it just going to all be dunks? Let's see here. Dunks, 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 Mike and drills, dunks. Okay. So let's slow this jumper down to 25% and just study the mechanics. It's a decent jumper. There's nothing mechanically very wrong. I would probably adjust. I think he's shooting here. I think he should be shooting here, but it's hard to tell from this angle exactly. It's easier to correct a jump shot in person. I say this as a person who shoots very well. But I mean, as long as it's consistent, I really don't care. Rasheed Wallace had a very unorthodox jumper. Peja Stojakovic had a very, very unorthodox jumper. You would never teach a kid to shoot like Peja, but if it's comfortable for you, it's like whatever. I've always believed that no two jumpers are exactly the same. Like everyone is like a snowflake. Like nobody jumpers are exactly the same. With Kaman, I don't think it's as I fuss over your release and your form. The smaller you are, the more fussy I am. So with Emmanuel Quickly, because he's very flat and kind of has a slow load, I'm way, way, way more concerned. I just genuinely don't care if it goes in at a 40% clip. I know it's going to get stopped in the playoffs. With him, with someone like Kaman or someone like Peja or someone like Dirk or someone like, Kevin Garnett, I'm just not as concerned. Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, I just don't care. The speed of your release, marginally, maybe, but I don't have any concerns. Mainly the question when you talk about reworking a jumper, i.e. Derek Queen, right? His jumper needs to be reworked. Like there's a lot of adjustments and it's not just the simple, as Carter Bryant, like, oh, we're gonna speed it up. No, you need to fundamentally rework the mechanics of his jumper, which is the fucked up thing is he's been shooting it that way for a while now. So if you consider the outcome of what if it doesn't work when we rework it, that's the problem. With a small guard, if you try to rework the jumper and it doesn't work, well, now it's Markelle Fultz. You're fucked. If it's a bigger player and you try to rework it and you have to revert back to maybe like some blend of where you want it to be and where he wants it to be or where it's been, you're not in as much trouble. That's why, yeah, it's just big. Pen, it's smooth looking for a 19-year-old big. It's beautiful. It's not bad. No. I think he has very, very good mechanics. I think his jumper has better mechanics than Ulrich's jumper. For sure. And by the way, it's very difficult to shoot jumpers with a 7'7" wingspan. It's always been very difficult. Shador said Aaron Gordon went from 32% to 45% just by working on it all offseason, just minor changes in practicing. Aaron Gordon is probably one of the 5 biggest outlier shooting development stories in NBA history. I would not set my clock that anyone is going to be able to replicate that. He is 18. Yes, he is. Yep. Which teams are tanking next year? All of them. Every team is tanking. Washington will tank. Utah will tank. Charlotte will tank. Atlanta might tank. Chicago probably won't tank, but might tank. Who knows? If they take another if they take another guard, maybe look to unload Kobe White or something, they could tank. I think the Pelicans could be a team that looks to tank. I definitely think the Bucks are going to try to tank. Who else? Miami could potentially look to tank. Yeah, man, it's basically all the teams that tank this year with the exception of the Raptors. I mean, Philly could certainly tank. I have no idea what's going on with them. So someone said the other day that the Boston Celtics could look to tank. I disagree. I don't think they can tank. I don't think they'll ever be bad enough to tank, but certainly if it goes haywire very quickly, they could look to parse some pieces out. Yeah, I would like to meet these people that knew that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was going to be a star. OT87 said, Pen, your thoughts, Kaman versus Chet, how they form everything. I don't understand the question. Chet was way, 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 way better. As a defender, he was better. As an offensive player, he was better. As a playmaker, he was better. He's just better. He's way, way, way better. But he's also way, way, way ahead. Chet's been hooping like his whole life. So, who knows? Like maybe in 5 years, Kaman's better. I have no idea. This might be a hot take, but not a lot of people are talking about Danny Wolf. He might be the most unique prospect, smooth, shooting touch, high IQ, and I see a little bit of Nikola Jokic in his game. Okay. Let me try to turn off the Asperger's and just try to be as reasonably nice about this as possible. He's not Nikola Jokic. His handle is not going to translate to the NBA level. He is a relatively skilled big with significant defensive issues. I don't believe in him at all. I think he's going to be, at best, like a rotation big. If he turns into a star, I'll eat crow on it. I don't think it's going to happen, bro. He's just a really smart player who got a very unique opportunity. There are bigs who can handle the basketball. Just most of them are not given this level of, like, he has a low center of gravity. He's not a great rim protector. Obviously, he's a terrible rim protector. He's a really good rebounder. Give him that. He's a good rebounder. You know, he has decent touch. He's a really good passer. But is he good enough passer to replicate the role of a point guard at the NBA level? Or is he going to be like handed the decision making responsibilities as a post hub like Domantas Sabonis? Maybe, maybe. I think best case scenario, very, very, very poor man's Domantas Sabonis. Not a player that I personally would bet very highly on. Just not an archetype of player I like. There's something special about Wolf. Yeah, the way he moves is very unorthodox for a player who's a legit 6'11". Like that's extremely rare. But it's not like a unicorn trait. Like we do have players who are now like a lot bigger than him and more athletic than him that do move a little bit like guards, don't we? Doesn't Evan Mobley have guard like tendencies? Doesn't shit like last year, Deron Holmes. I mean, I'm not saying he's like a guard, but he can handle the basketball. Draymond Green handles the basketball. Nikola Jokic handles the basketball. Alperen Sengun can sort of like do a little bit of a crossover. You know, he can handle the basketball. There's plenty of bigs who can do this shit. I just don't think the Nikola Jokic thing is like, y'all need to realize this guy's a unicorn among unicorns when it comes to being that level of processor and playmaker. If you want to win at the NBA level, you cannot run your offense through Alperen Sengun. It's not. Bam Adebayo is another example. Good one chosen for sure. Is Malawach top 5 tallest players in the league day one? Top 5. Well, is Bol still in the league? Off top of my head, Donovan Clingan is just as tall, if not taller. Zach Edey is taller. Wemby is taller. I can't think of the fourth player who's taller. There probably is a fourth player who's taller, but he probably is for sure. Also, Ryan Kalkbrenner is not that much shorter than Malawach. Porzingis is 7'3". You are correct, chosen. Kristaps Porzingis is 7'3". I mean, look, as many things as I want to keep me up at night, this isn't one of them. If you really want to be upset, we also picked DeAndre Daniels over Nikola Jokic. That kind of sucks. Also kind of sucks that Masai's former team picked him. But, yeah. Jokic's game has some downsides as well because he needs an entry pass to operate as well as you saw in the OKC series. Players like Steph has the ball in his hands all the time. Yeah, but Jokic is also a fully capable lead initiator, like with the basketball. It's just very taxing. And also, I wouldn't judge a player for not being super effective against OKC. OKC is designed to make players not very effective. Anyways, I keep getting this one bar and it's sort of freaking me out. So I'm gonna go back to the wired connection, but I can't switch from wireless to wired midstream, otherwise it'll cut out. So I appreciate y'all for checking in. Let me know in the comments what you think the Raptors should do. Should the Raptors be patient? Should they ride it out with IQ, RJ, and Grady and just pray that the offense beats out the defense? Or would you trade 1, 2, or all 3 of these players and maybe post your best trade package when the comments go live, right? Young Lyskin said, take care, y'all. Take care. And, you know, if this video was informative for you, if you liked it, if you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like. Make sure to share it on socials if you want. Make sure to share it with a fellow Raptor fan. Fran. We invent a new word. A Raptor Fran. A friend who is a fan of this team. Absolutely. Quickly to the Magic. Yep. We talked about it. Wait, who you picked for us at 9? I came late. Bro, whether we pick 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, my pick is the same. It's Carter Bryant. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Have a great one. Enjoy.